was feeling warm. It felt warm, and I think I was pretty calm. I was looking forward to share my music with the audience.
Take us back to that stage in the first round in October. The MC announces your name and program. You walk up the stairs to the stage. You see the audience. You bow, you sit down, you play. What were you feeling and thinking in each and every moment?
I think that made me feel at ease.
What are the most important lessons that you have learned from this competition? She just competed at the International Chopin Competition. This is the legend of Athena Deng. Athena, thank you so much for coming back onto the show.
Thank you for having me again.
How was Warsaw?
It was a very, very interesting and like a month of renewal, basically. Yeah.
Renewal, interesting,
Yes.
renewal. So in what sense do you mean by renewal?
I think I discovered many new things about Chopin's music and also myself when I was there. I stayed behind after my round was finished. I stayed behind until the very end of the competition just so I could listen to everyone else play, and it was definitely like a really valuable learning experience.
Nice. Very, very good to hear. And so much has changed since the last time that you were on the show. In fact, we actually spoke before you competed at the preliminaries. Describe your experiences at the prelims. How was it?
I think the prelims was not as nerve-wracking for me as I thought it would be, because, like, first of all, it was a smaller hall, and back then I think I went there alone, and I was there for maybe a few days before my round to get rid of jet lag and kind of get into the rhythm a bit. And I was just practicing. I kind of walked around, and I think I went to the church. I forgot if I did that time because I've been to Warsaw 3 times now. But it was pretty relaxed, and I think I was pretty happy with my performance back then. I don't quite remember. Yeah, it's been a long time ago. But yeah, overall, great experience. I wasn't thinking too hard about the outcomes either. I just went and played and then came back.
That's good to hear. Very good to hear. And as we would all know, you would qualify for the main competition. When that happened, when you realized that you did qualify for the main rounds of the competition, how did your preparation change?
Well, first of all, before I was kind of just focused on the few pieces that I was preparing for the prelims. But after I knew I qualified, I started making a whole plan as to how I can divide my entire repertoire into like chunks, so rotating-ish, for each day, week, month. And it was also that like almost every month after May, I was able to kind of have this public run through of certain rounds. And there was planning for that as well. And most of the planning, actually, like the credit goes to ChatGPT because I'm not good at planning myself. So this was the first time I've had to really portion everything out so I could manage my time wisely and be able to get to the level I wanted everything to be at.
Yeah, as you know, and as many people would also know about competitions like the Chopin competition, you have to be solid and pretty much excellent in every single round of the competition. So, as you mentioned, having that sort of plan, that sort of strategy in tackling each round and each piece in that round is not just important, but it's crucial to even, well, doing well, even in the preliminaries in the first place, right? And even watching the competition eventually afterwards, and even, honestly, even the preliminaries, it was already so competitive already at that point, ridiculously competitive at this point. The point differentials, as we would know in the marking, is literally as close as a decimal point, right? So that preparation that you had was, again, very, very important in making sure you're on tip-top shape. And as you would also know, there's also an important part of practicing performing even, right? There's practicing, and then there's practicing performing. And that also needs scheduling and time as well. Since we last spoke, you graduated from the Bachelor of Music program, and then you immediately began your Master's of Music program just a few months ago. How was that transition, and how did it help your preparation for the main competition?
I think actually it was a pretty big upheaval in my life. And the most of the summer I spent back in Canada. I was at home in Vancouver, and I went to Montreal a few times to take lessons with my teacher. And it was also for like a little run through concert we did for the entire studio, because like so many people from our studio went. And so I was in Montreal a few times, and then Vancouver, and I only came to Boston maybe like late August. And I wasn't really home for that long before, like home here in Boston, before I went to Warsaw. So it was a lot of moving around and kind of trying to adapt to new spaces, new practicing spaces, because I can't practice as freely here. I have a downstairs neighbor that kind of hates what I'm doing. And so it was a lot of like, I have to kind of go to school to NEC to practice, and having to just that on maybe like that a little bit on top of the preparations I was already doing was a bit much. Yeah.
And that leads into another question that I also had about this transition process. Aside from that, what were the greatest challenges that you faced as you were balancing your new program with your preparations for the International Chopin Competition?
With piano performance, usually, like if you're preparing for, like, I guess within the program, unless it's like spring semester and you're maybe getting ready for what they call promotionals here, which is like juries, where they have specific requests, like you have to play this and this from different eras of music. You're basically, you're in charge of what you're practicing and what you're performing. So there's not really a set, like you're not asked to learn certain things for your program, I guess, at least not right now. So it wasn't separate for me. I was just practicing Chopin all day, every day. It was just the competition that was there. Of course, there's like other schoolwork, but that's not a part of piano practice. So my life right now or my life back then was, so I had, whenever I practiced daily, it was just Chopin. Like it was just preparing for the competition because that was the main thing. And there was also just going to the two classes that I had. That one of them was like a piano seminar where people were invited to come, like outside speakers, like artists, who some of them are also pianists, or most of them. And the other one is like ethnomusicology. So both of these are like not directly related with Chopin, and they don't impact my personal practice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was just preparing for the competition. And I think the challenges I faced were just I think just time management, and also I like admittedly there was a point, I think, mid September, where I realized there were certain pieces in the earlier rounds, because I kind of started preparing from the latest round. I prepared from Poland's Fantasy Concerto, and then I went backwards. And there was a point in mid September where I had to play my first round in Oberlin, like a concert mock run through thing. And I also had another, like I had two other performances in Toronto, and these were back to back. But what I was playing in Toronto was from mostly my third round, and these pieces were relatively new. I started learning the bolero maybe like 2 months before I played it there, so it was like very new, and it was my first time playing the three impromptus and the bolero for an audience. And I think like just having these back to back in such a short amount of time, where I realized like my time management wasn't going as well as I wanted it to. Yeah, like it turned out a bit shaky. So that was the most challenging time for me.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency with everything that you do, right? And it's a story that I've been learning a lot more from not just your experience, but also from other pianist experiences as well. There were stories where I heard from other pianists in the past where they would learn sometimes even the entirety of Chopin's 24 preludes in literally weeks before the actual concert itself. And I was like, oh, wow, like all 24 even. That's a lot that you have to pack. I mean, at the end of the day, it only amounts to, I think, about 30 or 40 minutes worth of music, but still, I mean, I think that's yet another challenge that I'm quite surprised by, even by today. I mean, I think this would have been the case even 10 or 15 years ago, but to see just how the sheer diversity of repertoire that a pianist has to go through nowadays is unbelievable. So a good example is Elizabeth Pion, who just won Honens. Immediately after winning that, she has three other performances that are in pieces that are quite different from what she was playing in Honens. It's like, wow, wow. I mean, Honens is already its own major competition that you have to prepare for, and then on top of that, you have other performances coming on that. It's honestly spectacular how you guys handle it that quickly, but yet have to plan all of that out because there's not a lot of time.
Yeah, that's true. And also what I realized in this preparation process, because the bolero was really just like a very last minute decision. I didn't want to play. I was going to play all the impromptus, but for some reason, I just didn't want to play the fantasy impromptu. Like I just didn't want to play it. And I was, I think like right before I went to Montreal from Vancouver, like mid-August or early August-ish, I was just playing the CDs. I was playing through the CDs at home and like desperately trying to find a piece that was not overplayed, but that I also liked. And I was actually, it was like an old CD by Garrick Olson, and that my mom had found, maybe like it was like secondhand somewhere in Germany. And I was just playing through all the pieces, and like I wasn't like listening. I was just kind of passive listening. And then there came a piece that really, really grabbed my attention from the very first bum, 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 and it was the bolero. And at that moment, I decided, okay, I don't care if it's late. I love this piece. It really spoke to me. I'm going to learn it, and I'm going to play it. And so like having that kind of decision, and also just like, and it's like not really about just learning the notes. It's having like knowing the music, and knowing the structure, and knowing like just being familiar with the harmonies, texture, everything. It's a very different thing. So I think at that point in time, a lot of my repertoire I had played since I was very young. So it was mostly muscle memory, which actually didn't work out as well because sometimes, like if you're having a bad day during a performance and your kind of your hands aren't listening to you, then you can slip easily. But then, since these pieces were so new and I had to get them ready in such a short amount of time, I couldn't rely on muscle memory at all. And I was just kind of, I put everything into analyzing the pieces and really trying to familiarize not just my hands, but also my ears with the structure of the piece, like where am I going next and how does this look on like a I don't know, like I was trying to get like a more bird's eye view of the piece, and I realized like that was like a whole new learning process for me, and I realized maybe that's how I should be learning music, not just playing it every day until it kind of just gets baked into my hands.
Yeah, there's one risk with being too familiar with the piece, which is the other extreme. It's that you start falling into habits that you don't want to fall into. Those are bad habits, or I mean, that's why there's always that kind of balance, right? Do you want to be too familiar or unfamiliar at all, right? So I think that one good thing that came out of just having that freshness of the piece, whatever that piece may be. In your case, it was a bolero, but really, it really isn't any piece. At least from my own personal experience, it's that because I come into it from a fresh mind, when I'm hearing it for the first time, or if I'm hearing it for the first maybe 3 or 4 times, I don't already have a set opinion of what it should be or a set idea of what it should be, right? Before all that kind of stuff, right? So my interpretation, at least to me, tends to be a lot more pure in the sense that it's not heavily taking from other performances in the past, from other recordings, right? And whereas for other pieces, if I've already heard that piece 100 times, especially in my childhood, I mean, I already have, my ideas already been heavily influenced by other people, right? And I think it's also the reason why you're mentioning about even the fantasy impromptu.
Yeah.
I mean, that piece is one of the most, frankly, overplayed pieces ever. Right up
Yeah.
there with Eine kleine Nachtmusik by Mozart. With pieces like that, you hear it so many times that it's just like, okay, it's not even fresh anymore. It's completely overplayed. So that selection process, I think, from how you described it, it's just something that I think many pianists would very much relate to in their own experiences with whatever music that they're playing. It doesn't even necessarily have to be at a competition. It could be just at a typical performance that they're doing, right? It's I think a very relatable experience for many of these different pianists.
Yeah. And also when you were talking about how like hearing a piece over and over again that you're like, my ears can't take this anymore. Actually, I have something to say for that because since I sat through like most of the rest of the competition, I tickets were so hard to get. But I was able to sit through maybe like at least 2 days from each different round. And there were pieces that I had never heard before, and there were pieces that I've heard so many times and I've played so many times. But I think the most memorable experiences were the ones where I know this piece. I know that everyone knows this piece, but as I was sitting there, I tried not to look at the program or like even listen to what the announcer was saying. Like I just tried to listen only to the music. Like sometimes I even close my eyes so I wouldn't have any sort of judgment. And I was just listening, and it was so magical hearing a piece that I thought I was so familiar with in a completely different light. It was like hearing a completely new piece, and there were some interpretations that just left me in awe. Like how is it possible that they were able to pick out these things that I had never discovered before in the score itself, or how were they able to play it that way? And I was thinking and wondering the whole time as I was listening to the performances. I think these were really memorable experiences.
Yeah, and I should also amend what I was just saying earlier as well. When you hear a lot of people playing the same pieces, especially if many of them are just they don't even have the technique down, that's when it gets grating, right? It's different when you're at a competition like the International Chopin Competition, where everybody is at the top of the game. They're the best of the best of the best, right? So even if you hear the same piece, like even the concerti is a good example. Even if you hear it played more than 3, 4, or 5 times, it does not get old because you're hearing genuinely different interpretations of the same piece. And you were talking about how you would be able to hear even pieces that you never heard before, but also combined with pieces that have fresh interpretations. That is also something that I noticed, not just from this year, but from every single year that the International Chopin Competition has been run, because you would hear all these pieces, like, for example, Kevin Chen, right, in his first round, when I heard him play, I mean, another very not as often played, but relatively well-known pieces is the double thirds etude. And when he played it, I'm just like, whoa, he just blew through it. And he made it look easy. He made it look easy. And I was saying this with my family, even with some colleagues. The double thirds, at least for me personally, is a very, very difficult technique because you're not just playing, I mean, if you're playing one chromatic scale on one hand, that's easy. But if you're playing two, all of a sudden, your hand has to move in a different way, a very different way, I should say, from how you would normally play from just a single scale on one hand. So, but for Kevin to just blow through it, and not just that, even have a wavy melodic line coming out of it or a harmonic line coming out of it, I'm sitting here thinking, whoa, it just came out of nowhere, right? So examples like that, and even using your example, even you played the Nocturne, one of Chopin's Nocturnes, and that particular Nocturne was one that I have rarely heard. A lot of Polish people saying like we rarely hear this. So to hear that was really refreshing in the sense that there's something different, right? Or at least something that's not played 100 times, even at the top level. What I also noticed was that it really spoke to me in a different way. Where I actually posted about this too back in October. I was like, yeah, I have the first minute and 20 seconds on repeat because that opening was like, it really, at least for me, really captivated me and a lot of different people watching it at the time. So these different examples of how in the most unexpected places or sort of unexpected places, you can hear fresh playing, fresh interpretations, or even brand new repertoire that you've never heard of before. I think that is what really informs and really gives the beauty of really these competitions to other people. Versus if you hear fancy impromptu played by someone who shouldn't be playing the piece because they're not at that technique yet, that's not exactly a fun thing to listen to. It could be a little bit grating, but there's that difference, right?
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that you liked it because I think the first minute or so of that Nocturne was like the worst experience for me. I speaking of that day, as I was going on stage, like it was fine until the moment I started playing, and then for some reason nothing felt right. As my fingers hit the keys, like it was just like I was kind of like in midair almost. Like my hands felt like they were in midair. Of course they were touching the keys, but I like it's just horrible because I had such a good vision for this Nocturne, and I know it's not played as much, so I really wanted to give the best that I can for this piece. So like for people who are listening, but for some reason it just didn't feel right, and yeah, it's pretty far from how I would have liked to play it, and it's kind of like a pity that I like it's a nocturne. Like why would it be shaky? But you know, you never know. But I think speaking of the nocturne itself, I picked it because it's very like the harmonies are crazy because he goes through like so many different just like keys, and like it's like bright and then it's dark the next second, which I think is both very authentic to Chopin and also maybe like Polish as a whole, because as I was conversing with Polish people that I've gotten to know over the course of the competition and this past year, I think like they can be very funny. Like they'd be telling you a joke the second, and the next second they're talking about somebody's death, and you're like caught there. But they just kind of like it flows into it so naturally. It's like, you know, like when the sun is outside and then suddenly like a cloud goes over it and it's dark. So they just flow into it so naturally, and you're caught there like you don't know if you should laugh at the joke that they just told, or say, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," and like not laugh. Like you don't know, and I think that's why Chopin's music, like it's so close and so like closely connected with Polish culture as a whole. Like it's very interconnected.
Yeah, yeah. I think that describes a lot of internet culture, honestly, internet jokes and memes and whatnot. It's like, should I laugh at that? I don't think so. You know. But yeah, that piece alone, first of all, classic Chopin. And second of all, the reason why I say classic Chopin is because I think he goes through about 5 or 6 modulations of the key in the first 2 or 3 lines alone, honestly. So yeah, totally, I totally see that sort of change in key. I mean, it's very, very obvious right there, right? And you have to kind of be able to adapt to each part, right? That feeling that you mentioned about feeling like you're floating on top of the keys, I understand that feeling a lot. I understand that feeling so much. It's, oh boy, it's the worst because and it happens when you least expect it too. It's like, oh, come on, I practiced for this part, right? But
Yeah.
to be honest, I did not hear it. And I'm not saying this out of honesty. I'm saying this, I honestly didn't hear it because again, like I have the first minute and 20 seconds on repeat for like the first couple of days. I'm just like, this is really, really good. It's actually really, really fresh. And it's like, what? It's like, this is, it's so good. So like it just captivated in such a way that you, at least to me, from an audience perspective, it sounded, the melodic lines sounded very clear, like really, really clear. And I don't know if it was maybe sound engineering, but I doubt it because your bass line was also very, very clear. And it encapsulated basically, it was like the full package right there. It's like the full holistic package at that point. So for me, at least, it got my attention, frankly. And it's not because I know you. It's because I genuinely felt it's like, okay, yeah, okay, like this is really, really nice, you know? So no, I mean, like I think it genuinely sounded really, really nice. And a lot of people, at least that I spoke with, even here back at home in Canada, and even some of my subscribers even told me they really felt captivated by it. And these are people who know the piece as well as you and I do, some more than us, of course, given their age and experience. But yeah, these are people who also felt the same way. So don't worry about not coming through that way. I mean, it may not sound good to, I understand this too, right? For us pianists, we don't feel it that way, but to audience members, they might be like, no, we do feel that way, and it's actually really good, right? So don't worry about that.
Oh, I'm glad it resonated with you and all the people you talked to.
So we were talking about your selection of your repertoire. Another thing that's probably even more last minute than your repertoire was the piano itself. So take us through your selection process of the different pianos at Warsaw. both at the preliminaries and at the main competition. In the prelims, you chose the Yamaha, and in the main rounds, you chose the Kawai. Why?
So preliminaries, I think I didn't have much of a choice. It was just Steinway or Yamaha, and it wasn't even just like it wasn't about the brand or anything. It was just about the two pianos, how they sounded like and how they felt in that space in that time. So I think having that narrow of a choice back then, I was more inclined to feel it out rather than because the Steinway, of course, Steinways always sound like they have a really wide range of sounds you can produce. I think the bass is what I love the most about Steinways. It's very full, very resonant, great for concert halls. But on that day, I was trying things out on that piano, which I think I'm not sure about this. I hope, like, if somebody who's watching this podcast, like, later on knows about it, please tell me. Like, I'm not sure if it's the same piano, but it felt like the same piano, which is why I didn't choose it for the main competition either. For some reason, like, the touch felt very uneven. Like, it felt like a very risky choice, especially for like at that time preliminaries. Like, I had never played there. It's like an unfamiliar space, unfamiliar stage, and I wasn't about to risk it. And the Yamaha, of course, like it just felt better. It felt more comfortable, but of course, like, there are limitations. It's not like I kind of sacrificed sound for feel. But yeah, I guess, like, maybe in competitions, it's better to choose the piano that feels more comfortable so you're able to give your best rather than choose something that has like a lot of range, like a lot of possibilities, but if you're nervous, then you can't get there at all. So for the main competition, of course, like, there are more choices, and I went in with a more specific plan as to how I was going to try things out. And of course, I started with the Yamaha, but I don't know. Like, this is not to say anything bad about Yamaha as a brand. It was just that specific piano, and it didn't really have anything that was like a light bulb moment to me. It just felt kind of like normal, and so I moved on. I think the piano right next to it was a Kawai, and for some reason, like, as soon as I started playing it, I was like, wow, this sounds so beautiful. But of course, like, I had to also try out the Steinway because it's like the standard. And I went to the Steinway, and of course, for some reason, I felt maybe it was the same one as the one they used in prelims, because it was also that very weird, like, uneven feeling in the keys. And, well, like, it sounded great. And I was also, oh, like, one other thing, I was trying out the pedal. Like, the pedal was one of the more important, how do you call it? Like, the thing that impacts your decision. I don't know.
It's like a make or break kind of.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, like the make or break thing. So the pedal on the Steinway I didn't like. I think it wasn't as sensitive as I wanted it to be. Whereas on the Kawai, I went and I tried the beginning of the second movement of the second concerto, and there's like so like you kind of play this thing, and you when you land on the E flat, you're supposed to lift the pedal very slowly, and the Kawai had such amazing action on the pedal. Like, it was like a completely, like, the what do you call it, like, the decay was so smooth, and that whole, I was just amazed. And of course, I had to also try the Fazioli and the Bechstein, but it was like I played a few notes on it and I was like, Oh no, I'm not. No, no. I don't even have to go through the parts, the fragments of pieces I put for each piano, so I could really hear everything. I didn't even go there. I was just like, I played a few notes. No,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, and I think it even showed in the number of people who picked the Kawai as well. I think it was number 2 or number 3 this year, which was a big surprise for me, honestly, because in my personal experience, and again, not to bash Kawai for this, but in my own experiences, many of the Kawais that I've played on in the past were pretty bad because their action, the responsiveness was really, really bad. Like I felt like I was pushing against 10-pound weights, and this was during a
Oh,
time, and this was during a time where I didn't lift yet, so it felt like I was like, "Ugh, no, I mean I lift now, but I mean it's still it's not fun to play on, right? But but yeah, no, it's you're talking about the unevenness of the piano. I mean, honestly, this is also a challenge that we have to face as well in terms of different pianos. Is that sometimes even the regulation, I mean, it's not regulated well, or maybe it might be. I mean, if it's a slightly older instrument, I mean, by slightly older, I mean how much older is it really? But it might have originally have had good regulation, but then over time there wasn't enough maintenance going into it, so it's just kind of there are certain parts of the piano that don't feel right, that don't feel as even as it should. So, but it's good that you found eventually the piano that resonated with you a lot, and you said it so well. And you were mentioning this even in the last time you were on the podcast, especially with pianos that you were not familiar with. It's really about. I mean, even if the piano doesn't really feel familiar at that point, it's like just being able to kind of understand like what the end goal is and just kind of encapsulating even the sound into it is so important, especially with again a piano that you have never played on before. But this time, with now that added familiarity, you have now one leg up where you have that slight familiarity and now you know how it feels and better control on how it sounds, right? The worst thing that can happen is knowing that it sounds great, but you can't control it. So eventually the sound doesn't sound like what you want it to sound like.
Yeah. But actually, I can attest to the feeling like you were pushing weights for Kawaii pianos. Because when I was practicing at their headquarters, like store-ish, we were able to practice both on the Shigeru Kawai, which is what they used for the stage, and also K Kawai, which is like, I guess they're more like not as high end. I guess line. I don't know.
Right.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. But the K Kawai, these are supposed to be heavy. Like I talked to the technician after practicing. I was like, oh, like it feels very like weighted. Like it feels like the keys are fighting against my fingers. And he was like, yes, they're supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
And like some people like it, and it's actually I don't know if this is like counterintuitive, but it's actually to practice on heavy pianos like these, so you don't you don't get used to such like easy to play pianos that when you go on stage and the piano's heavy, like you can barely make a sound. So it's actually good to practice on heavier pianos.
Yeah, and I mentioned this on earlier episodes as well, where exactly at that point, it's good to have practice on heavier pianos, then you can just kind of dial back when you're playing on lighter pianos. That being said, I mean, for competitions in general, when you're relying, especially on very technical pieces where you're relying on rapid pressing of the same key, I mean, Scarlatti, I think Argerich, it's a very well known example where she played one of Scarlatti's, I think Sonatinas, or I forgot the name of the piece, but it's rapid playing of the same keys, right? I mean, with stuff like that, you need to have. I mean, not necessarily super light, but you need to have light, or you cannot have a heavy piano on those parts. And luckily, you're not playing Franz Liszt at the competition. But if you're playing Franz Liszt, you need that lightness, sort of that relative lightness in that part. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how technical you could be. You could be Arkady Volodos. I mean, he could probably do it, but you could be the most technical person out there, but you're still not going to be at 100% with that. I mean, this might be a hot take in some circles, but I think there has to be that balance, right? So hearing the technicians say that, oh, it's supposed to be heavy, I'm like, yeah, good for practice, but I don't know if it's good for performances though overall. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say 100% no, but I don't know about that. I just don't know about that personally. So take us back to that stage in the first round in October. The MC announces your name and program. You walk up the stairs to the stage. You see the audience. You bow, you sit down, you play. What were you feeling and thinking in each and every moment?
Um, well, I talked about what happened after I started playing, which was when everything started to go wrong. But before that, actually, like when I was backstage and even walking to the Philharmonia, right before my round, like I walked there and just kind of standing backstage and getting ready to go on stage, I was feeling, I think, warm. I This is very rare for competitions because it's so easy to get cold hands and like sometimes the air conditioning is like right above you, especially in Asian countries. It's like so bad. But it was it felt warm, and I think I was pretty calm. I was looking forward to share my music with the audience. And like as I was walking up those stairs, like the little twist and turn thing, and going down like the big stairs on the stage, like I have been warned by my teacher to watch out for these steps because like sometimes like you don't, I don't know, like there have been times where it's easy to trip on them. But I think just going there and seeing the audience and seeing everyone in the hall, like as well as the judges, like I kind of did like a, what do you call it, like a once over before I bowed. I I think it was like it felt warm and welcoming, and I think that made me feel at ease. Like that helped me for after I got rid of, or like I got more I acknowledged and accepted my nerves mid performance, maybe like going into the etude and the ballade later. But yeah, it was, I don't know, it felt good. It felt like, I guess mentally and in an ambient sense, it was good. But then for some reason, like my, I don't know, like the nerves backfired on me. So I wasn't able to control that. But as I've learned, it's best not to fight it. You just accept it and also try to listen to the music that you're playing.
Yeah, I think one common theme that I heard in the first round, even in the different Chopin talks that were taking place during the first round and even slightly after it, was that many of the pianists were shocked by how large the hall is in actuality, being there in person, at least from their experiences, which was a bit surprising to me because some of these pianists have been performing for years, their entire lives basically, in other concert halls that are either the same size or way larger. Maybe something might be a little smaller, but even then, like, for example, Koerner Hall is not as large as the Warsaw National Philharmonic, but it still boasts over 1,000 seats. And if you're in there, at least for me, having been the MC at the Canadian Chopin Competition, standing up there at the very least feels really big. So it always surprised me how I heard some of these pianists say that it was really shocking for them, the sheer size for them. So in your case, you said it perfectly. It felt warm, and I'm sitting here thinking that's very, very rare because, as you mentioned, hands are typically super cold. They're colder than the surface of Antarctica, basically. When you perform, it's the worst feeling in the world. But that's actually really good in a different way because I think the familiarity of it. I mean, seeing it so many times. I mean, you've seen it for the first time when you were a kid watching the Chopin competitions back in the old days, right? So from seeing that and going from that point going all the way till now, you've probably seen the hall many times, and now you're actually there. It's not like you've never seen the place before. You've already been familiar with the place in your experience, at least. So honestly, you mentioned you were nervous. It didn't come across as nervous. Maybe for the most part, honestly. I mean, it's for us again. Like we felt captivated not just by the performance, but it felt like you were there. Like you felt like you were like solidly there. At least, I mean, it's hard for me to explain it. Other than that, you came across well to people in the competition, at least to the audience, at least. So during the competition, I heard from other people in the Chopin Talk saying that it was a very, very friendly and kind of exciting environment, even outside of the stage. And I think you guys all are all housed in the same area or same kind of geographical area. How were the other competitors? How was the camaraderie? I heard it was a very friendly and a friendly environment with a lot of camaraderie. How was that experience there?
No, it was pretty friendly. Because we all stayed at the same hotel. I mean, like I didn't get to talk to many people. I was kind of just going from practice and back to the hotel and going to like going from the Kawai headquarters to the Chopin University and then to like it was like kind of like I wasn't really talking to anyone. But I think from what I can see, like sometimes during dinner, you would see people just eat together, and it was just the competitors, like no parents, but just the competitors. And yeah, it was a pretty nice atmosphere, and I was able to talk to some other competitors when we were waiting to like go on for Chopin Talk, and that was great
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back on the competition, both inside the competition venue and also outside of it, basically Warsaw as a whole. What were your favorite experiences in Warsaw during this time?
First of all, like the most interesting one was definitely just being a part of the audience and lining up. I kind of like I alternated a little bit, but it was mostly my mom who kind of lined up for these tickets, and it would take from very early in the morning to right before the evening session started, or even like through the evening session. It was just pretty much near impossible, especially in the later rounds, to get tickets. But just seeing everyone coming from all over the world, and also like there were people who were in the line so much that they started to get to know each other, and like everyone was just talking about how much they loved music and Chopin's music. I think just seeing everyone be so passionate about coming here and listening to the music. It's like this really just this huge collective human experience, like shared human passion. I think it was just really astounding to me. And also just being in the audience myself, it's a very different experience from being on stage. And actually, you said a lot of people said the hall felt big to them, but to me, actually, like it felt smaller than Koerner Hall. For some reason,
That's why.
it felt even smaller than Warner Hall in Oberlin, which is I think around the same size. But I think it's about the balconies. Like as long as you have balconies, it feels maybe like smaller. And also it was fully seated, so it felt like everyone was kind of like huddled in. So maybe that's why I felt a bit smaller. And also because it was warm. If it was like pretty much empty, like on other levels, or like it didn't have a balcony, it would feel cold.
Yeah.
I guess that's the only difference for me. Yeah, so just being a listener, and of course, like I was able to sit in different parts of the hall, and it was like a wholly different experience from different spots in the hall. Like I was at the very back on the first level, and like it was very muffled. Like these were probably not the best seats. I was in the balcony, like right behind the judges. Actually, like a year before I went to the hall, I was in Poland for a summer festival, and I was able to go to the Philharmonia for like a symphony performance, like, and I sat right where the judges were going to sit this year, and it actually like it didn't sound as clear as I thought it would. Like it's not as clear as what you see or hear in the live stream on YouTube. But the spot that I think is the closest to like the level of clarity you would hear from a YouTube live stream is the second balcony. That's where, because I think you're not you're not surrounded by that many people. It's just like a few rows of seats, and you have this whole hall. Like you have like the just like the sound, I guess, comes directly to you. I think that's the best spot, and it's probably really hard to get. I don't know. Like I traded seats with a friend, but it was just a very amazing experience to be able to stay and listen to all of the really wonderful performances. Other than that, in Warsaw, I also went to, at the same time it was the Warsaw Film Festival was going on, and I was able to catch a few screenings at the Atlantic, and that was cool. And I also, on one of the nights, I went to a show by a local label. Like they were called Laurel Tapes, and it was just I think it was 100% music that they produced themselves, and it was also a very cool experience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When you mentioned how the hall felt smaller, that explains, and also warmer, that explains honestly just how, I mean, again, it didn't come off, you didn't come off nervous to us, from what you're telling me. It makes total sense because, and again, that's why I was surprised when I heard so many different pianists say that it's a lot larger than I expected. I was like, really? I mean, if anything, Koerner Hall had 3 levels, if I remember correctly. There were, I think, 2 balconies. There was the main floor, and then the equivalent of a mezzanine, and then another one on top of that, right? Mm-hmm. So, if anything, yeah, like you said, that felt larger because of that, and I think the ceiling's higher in Koerner Hall. I could be completely wrong on this, but it feels like it's a lot higher there. Yeah. So the experience of that, I think, gives off a different kind of perception. But again, I mean, for pianists, I mean, it comes with, it's also another hurdle to overcome, right? It's just getting accustomed to the different places. With you sitting in the balcony and in the back, I'm not surprised that it sounds very muffled, because given the history of the Philharmonia, it's not exactly built with modern understanding of acoustics. Koerner Hall was built in 2009. It was constructed during 2007 to 2009. So we already had very updated acoustics knowledge of that, which is why out of all the places that I've emceed and announced at, it beats every single sports stadium I've ever announced at, because it felt so, when I was emceeing it, I felt like I was talking conversationally. Other places I can do that too, but I often can't really hear myself the same way as if I was talking in a normal room, in a regular room, in a regular conversation. But at Koerner, it was different because I felt that way the entirety of the finals round, which was it's the best experience that I've ever had by far so far in my career. So I could imagine, and I don't know if Jane or Magdalena could probably correct me on this, but I could imagine for them when they were judging, it was probably very clear even at the back as well, because it projected all the way there. But this also brings up another point that Janina Filkowska brought up on her episode, where one thing that when she was competing at the Rubinstein competition, the very first one, what she learned afterwards with Arthur Rubinstein himself was that she had to project to the back, right? She had to perform for even the people in the back. And that was something that she just didn't have experience of because at that point, she just didn't get to that point in her career yet, right? But at least from her time with Rubinstein, now she knew if she's performing at a professional level now with different people, Rubinstein told her, make sure that you have to consider even the people sitting in the back who can't hear it as well as people sitting in the front or even in the middle. And I think that's where some pianists nowadays, some pianists do have that kind of experience and knowing that from their teachers or from wherever they're studying at. I think that's what gives them maybe a slight advantage because in the Chopin competition, as you were saying, they were sitting up there in the balcony. And even on camera, we can see them sitting up there in the balcony, right? It's going to be different from sitting right up front. I mean, with the sound, the way how the sound projects across. The reason why people hear the music very clearly, of course, from the live stream is because you have these two mics right above where the piano is, right? It's directly in front of the piano or recording directly down into the piano. So all the sound comes through and you have sound engineers and sound producers and all that stuff who's managing all the nuances of the sound. So for us, it will sound very clear on the live stream. But yeah, it's very different when you're in person and if you're not sitting in the best seats, there's going to be dark spots, so to speak, within how the music sounds.
Yeah, and I think sitting in the worst spots in the hall made me realize like maybe I wasn't that good at projecting. Because like it's really like it really affects the performance and like how it's taken in by the audience if you can't like if your sound isn't clear enough or like if the pedal is blurring everything out because it's already pretty muffled to begin with. There are so many people back there, like it's just like very crowded. And so yeah, I think that's something I have to work on, like my sound and projection as well.
Yeah, and that's good to know, right? And to know where the parts of improvement are required in your playing. So it's good to know that that you have to project more in terms of how you're performing. And speaking about projection, for those of you in the audience who haven't done this yet, make sure to, for Zondo, the like button, to make sure you project that like button as loud as you can, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and click the bell notification icon so you'll always be notified whenever we upload. And also be able to follow us on all of our social media parts and also on Spotify and rate your favorite podcast as well. Now, back to the interview. Did you get a chance to see or visit Zelazowa Wola?
Yes, I went there 2 times. I was able to go there in the summer last year. It was like a festival in Radzijowice, and we had like day trips. And the very final day, we like before we took off to Warsaw, we kind of stopped in Zelazowa Wola, and I was able to listen to one of the concerts there. They have these concert series where you're in the house and you're playing through the windows. Like everyone else sitting outside, like the audience sitting outside. I guess the impression they're getting is, like when you're in a neighborhood and you kind of walk by somebody's house and somebody is playing piano from inside. It's a very interesting listening experience. But that time they were playing outside. And just combined with the trees, like the breeze ruffling the trees and the birds, and on that like very nice sunny summer afternoon, it was just like I don't know, it felt very timeless to me. When I closed my eyes and I heard like I was listening to the music, he played a Nocturne. I don't know, like it just kind of like it felt like it took me back in time to like Chopin's time, even though I know Chopin didn't play there like that. Like he was actually not there very much, I guess. Only as a kid, and they already moved away when he was very young, so he actually didn't spend that much time there. But I think, yeah, like I I don't know. I think I feel like there should be more concerts like this where it's not a standard concert hall and you're able to engage with the music in different spaces.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing that beats the experience of being outdoors and having music being played or performed to you in that sort of environment, especially when it's Chopin. I mean, I remember Dang Tai Son in one of his interviews in Poland. He was talking about when he was younger, his mom actually did the same thing, played Chopin in the outdoors. Now that was a different circumstance altogether, but he said that it really left an imprint on him, even from that experience alone. So that is truly, I mean, you said it perfectly, timeless. I mean, even just seeing just the environment of Zelazowa Wola is, I mean, from the videos that I've seen, it's amazing. If there's one place that I would probably compare it to, and especially with the shrubbery and the trees and the foliage, is Butchered Gardens in Victoria. I was actually born in Victoria, so that's why I know I know the place. But yeah, it reminds me of that. It just the peacefulness and just the blooms of all these different perennials and the different shrubbery and flowers there. I think there's even plenty of scientific studies on this where it has very active effects, positive effects on a person's mental and physical health too, at the end of the day, right? So combine that with Chopin, which is also its own positive effect as well. It leaves a positive imprint no matter how old you are.
I can attest to that because I've also been to the Gardens a lot. Since like we're in Vancouver, it's just a boat ride away. And yeah, the garden there is beautiful. There's like a little, I don't know what you call it. It's like they have like a little bridge over the, it's not a river. What do you call it? I don't know.
It's,
like a brook.
it's
Or
not like
like it's bigger. It's bigger than a brook.
a creek,
Something
canal.
like I don't know. But it's really the planning they did to renew the whole place because like of course like it didn't look like that back in Chopin's time and it didn't look like that like a century later because everything. But they had like in the museum I was able to see like they had this whole kind of plan, design how they were going to like place out the whole garden and especially in fall when there's not many people around. Like on the day we went this time, it was just like there was barely any people and it was just very quiet and you could see like the leaves kind of like falling slowly. I don't know, it felt very different. It felt almost it was like a little bit chilling almost. It's very different from in the summer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that chilling, that's sort of not necessarily otherworldly, but sort of uncanny feeling, I think is also the reason why, especially in the early 2000s, it's going a little bit of a tangent, but in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, up to really, I think the late 2000s or early 2010s, there was a pretty big boom of wilderness focused music CDs. So they could be played to, I mean, I think a good label is Dan Gibson's Solitudes, which is known for this sort of recording. It's a mix of sounds from rivers, from creeks, or from ponds, lakes, different places in, well, Canada or parts of the world, combined with music. It could be Beethoven, it could be Mozart. I don't think there was any Chopin, unfortunately, but this combination really gave a difference for, it actually was a burgeoning, it was a huge genre back in the early 2000s. Actually, I still have a couple of CDs from back in the day. I grew up with this music because I actually went to sleep with this music, actually, because it helped me fall asleep in a different way that just hearing classical music helps, but doesn't have the same kind of effect. So I think that kind of combination of a calming feature of the outdoors plus the music is, I think, what gives that sort of uncanny feeling when it's just so calming that it's like, whoa, this doesn't even feel, it feels so good that it doesn't even feel right. If it's like it's just that kind of weird kind of valley. I was like, is it going too far? But it's I'm rambling a little bit at this point, but
Yeah, I think people nowadays like it's something they would maybe call like maybe like nature ASMR or what like something like that. Yeah, but I like ambient music, but I haven't heard of people who actually record CDs like with nature sounds and like classical music like as like a combined thing. I've only like more or less like I've only heard like ambient music as is like it was just nature sounds or like electronically
yeah,
manipulated
yeah.
somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, but it's a good combination, and it worked for a long time. Looking back to this competition as a whole, we talked a little bit about some of the things you learned from that competition. If you could put all the important lessons that you've learned from this experience, what are the most important lessons that you have learned from this competition?
Um, I think actually the most important lesson I learned was that like I think it's no matter how much you love the music, like I think just preparation being a seasoned performer is so important. Just like being prepared. It's not like maybe sometimes you sit there and you listen to the music and you're like, well, like I think this should have more depth. But especially with competitions, like it's if the playing is technically perfect, it's like clear. I think that's the most basic level of what you should have as a performer. And I think I wasn't able to reach that myself. Like I was more concerned with the musical aspect rather than just getting it perfect and like being mentally strong enough to have it be consistently perfect throughout my performance. I think that's something I've learned that is really like it's more important than I thought it was. I think yeah, because like mentally it's a really big thing to have this amount of music and be able to play it well, like be able to play it at least to the level where you think this is what I want to express. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that was one of the biggest things I learned. Yeah.
yeah. And from this experience, how has your knowledge of Chopin evolved after your road to Warsaw?
I think it was more through listening. It wasn't like specific aspects of him. Um, I started reading up on him a little bit. I think I was like I was trying to like I have this book by Tomaszewski that goes through shared themes between his works and like just his life. And I would have liked to read it in whole. I would have liked to actually go in depth, but I had like time constraints, and there was also his letters. He wrote a lot. He wrote a lot to like certain people in his life, and even going to the museum, you could like see his handwriting. And I think like going to the museum actually taught me the most about him because I was able to look at his is that what you call like manuscripts, where you could see his working process. He crossed a lot of things out. He was very specific with certain like the pedal. Yeah, like that's I think like to this extent, I think just being there and like throughout this whole process, the one thing that it's taught me the most is like there's no end to learning about Chopin. Like you can literally learn more about him every day, which is why I think it's amazing what the NIFC is doing as a whole, like just kind of excavating new things about Chopin all the time. And I've heard the even the orchestra scores. the reason why it sounded so different this time is like they tried to remain more true to Chopin's original writing, and like of course like maybe he's not the best at writing orchestra parts, but I think it was an interesting take. Yeah, just putting everything into researching this one man and his music is really, really, really inspiring to me. And I think for me, it doesn't stop here. It's not stopping here. It didn't stop for me after being eliminated. I think it will continue on for my entire life. I will keep on learning about Chopin and his music. And I've heard so many things this time that people were playing that I would like to learn myself. And I've heard so many interpretations that were just like very enlightening to me and have helped me view the music I'm playing in a completely different light.
That's great to know that there are all these different sorts of ways to tackle Chopin. And you said it perfectly. There's always something to learn about Chopin, and really for every composer, but Chopin in particular is one that isn't, well, it's gaining more attention now with the competition, but traditionally has not been as well known as the other classical composers. But there's so much to learn from his life, from experience, from the way how he wrote, and his own philosophy even, to how he approached music. Actually, I even quoted a large part of his letters in one of my final papers in law school, where I compared his musical approach to one of our former Supreme Court justices in Canada, who actually, so I should probably tell you the story. I've mentioned this before on Nicholas Namoradze's episode, but I'll mention it again. So the Supreme Court justice that I was talking about is Rosalie Abella. She's a former Supreme Court justice because she retired in 2021, because in Canadian constitutional law, especially in the federal courts, you have to retire by your 75th birthday. And she was born on July 1st, actually, so Canada Day. So she retired on July 1st, 2021. I was there for her retirement conference in 2022 because COVID delayed it by 1 year, and it just wasn't safe enough to host a conference in 2021. So we did it in 2022 instead. Before she was a lawyer, before law school, before all that, she was a classical pianist. She, at one point, was considering whether or not to compete in the International Chopin Competition. And I know this because I spoke with one of her sons, and he told me that. She eventually said no, because her dad at the time actually told her, just given the circumstances that they were at that point, just not the best thing to do it. And also, as you would know, a classical pianist's life is quite difficult at times because you're constantly on the move, you're performing, all that kind of stuff, depending on how it was. And especially back in those days, and I want to say the 60s, not exactly very, very ideal for someone like her, who, given her opportunities at the time, I should say. Mm-hmm. So she changed pathways and went into law school and became one of the most legendary Supreme Court justices ever in Canada, and is still very well known. She's actually, I think, a chair of Harvard's law school right now. I was actually in contact with her a couple months ago, so she's doing quite well. Even she's 79 years old, and she's still doing really, really well. Still very, very sharp as well, and very, very good to hear from her end. But what was interesting about her is that, at least from what I saw, and I said this in my final paper, one of my final major papers in law school. If you look at her legal writing, at her decision writing, especially at the Supreme Court level, you see musical forms built in to her writing. It's basically, I use one of her Supreme Court cases. Duez and Facebook is the name of the case. It is an example of sonata allegro form. It is literally an example of sonata allegro form. You see it baked into the writing. And not just that, if you look at other cases that she's written about, her decisions, there's theme and variations, there's rondo form, there's ternary form, there's all these different harmonic ways, and even a bit of counterpoint that we see in her writing. There's one thing that as both a lawyer and a pianist myself, I can say that there's one or two commonalities between law and music, in the sense that We both learn in both areas, theory and theme. That's just oversimplifying everything. But even outside of that, I see these sort of patterns in her writing. And that's the reason why her writing was so clear, even as a judge. This was a question that was asked a lot back in law school. Why was it that Justice Abella's legal writing was so clear? Why is it so clear and very easy to understand? Even if you're not a lawyer, even if you're not legally trained, if you had a good understanding of English overall, you could still follow where she was going along with her writing. Why was that? My argument was, don't look at it from a legal standpoint. Look at it from a musical standpoint. In that case, it clicks. It really clicks. She actually read my paper at some point. My professors told me, Amos, I think Justice Abella would really like to read this paper. I'm like, yeah, definitely read my paper. And she said, this is fascinating. I was like, oh, okay, thank goodness. I mean, but
Yeah.
that's just the story of basically how I think, despite her not going down the path of music, despite her not writing music, she's still writing music in legal form. So it's a nice little story from a few years ago. So
Yeah, I wonder if that's why music is such a big part of our lives. Like it, even if you're not in it professionally, like I don't know, like the people I've been around, everyone's listening to music and engaging with music in some way every day. And it's just so like threaded into our everyday lives that maybe we can connect we can connect things that you would never think to connect with music. Like everything is interconnected in some ways.
I can tell you one thing, even from my other hobby as a sports announcer, there's direct parallels between my musical experience with sports announcing as well. Because I wasn't a guy who played a lot of sports back in the day. Obviously, I was a classical pianist back in the day, right? You don't typically play sports at a competitive level when you're doing music, right? But when I was approaching all these different sports, when I'm announcing on the broadcast, like hockey, basketball, swimming, whatever it is, and I've announced probably around close to 10 different sports now to this very day. What I realized was that I can't rely on sports experience because I never played a sport. Well, I mean, I played volleyball for 1 year, but I don't have a background in sports. But I can use the performative aspects of music, of being a pianist, into the way how I talk, right? And being able to have that sort of tempo, even in the way how I talk on the broadcast, rather, and following the action and understanding what works and what doesn't work from a performative aspect of announcing, then for me, it was a lot easier. Because for me, I found that sort of avenue going forward into it. Been doing it for a long time, and I realized that approach really, really worked out for me. Because without that experience, I probably wouldn't have done as well in announcing as I would have back in the day, especially when I started out many years ago. But even that parallel is something that I found was really informative in the way how I approached it as well. So, what's next for you now that you finished the road to Warsaw in 2025? What is next for the great Athena Deng? Will we see you in 2030?
I'm not thinking about it as like a linear thing, like because I didn't like this time didn't work out for me. Now I'm going to make my whole existence in the next 5 years about going to the 2030 competition. But I'm pausing right now. I think I need to build like a I need to. We talked about this before about how pianists like they can just quickly bring up a new or like a different program for different performances back to back. I think I need time to really get into it and build up my repertoire that both like it's like performable and it's competable, but also it speaks to who I am as a person. I think that's what's most important about me right now. Yeah, because I think I've been playing, like I've kind of been tunnel vision for Chopin in the past 2 or 3 years. Like I've been playing mostly Chopin, and sometimes when you're sitting with one thing for too long, it's actually not good because you don't have like you don't have that variety where you're learning one thing about this other piece from this piece you're playing. Like you're not like cross learning. You're just kind of you only have one thing to work with. And I think it's time for me to explore other parts of what I can do with piano, or even with music as a whole. I think I would like to start composing at one point, or like producing maybe, to really, like, I need to learn maybe the forms of music and like textures and whatnot. Yeah, I think it's like a right now I think I'm going to go back into learning for the sake of learning, like not for the sake of getting somewhere, really, like learning for the sake of just being more knowledgeable about both music and myself. I think for the 2030 competition, maybe, perhaps, but I do hope that if I ever get there, I do hope that this next time I will be able to really have read enough on Chopin that not just kind of touching on certain parts of the readings, like the ones I needed for the specific pieces I was playing, but really overall, just like a well-rounded kind of research thing that can back me up. And also just have, maybe in the next few years, I hope that I can get more used to performing on stage so I can be a more seasoned performer, and also be able to just present my music better in that sense, like in nerve-wracking situations like a competition. Yeah.
Nice. It's really good to hear that you want to take a holistic sense to it, to the different ways and pathways that music has. That way you're more, I mean, to borrow Honen's philosophy, a more complete artist, so to speak, in that sense. So very good to hear that you've got quite a wide array of plans going forward for the next few years or so. And regardless of whether you want to go to 2030, it's exciting to see where that will be headed in. As we begin to close this episode, what would you like to say to your fans now that the Chopin competition has finished? You now have a bit of a fan base now. So what would you like to say to your fans?
I would just like to say thank you for listening to me and believing in me as a person and musician. And please stay tuned for more things coming. I don't know what they are yet, but more music from me, whether it's my own or whether it's from other composers. Yeah.
Great to hear. Great to hear. And great words to end on. Athena, thank you so very much for coming back on. It was a joy to watch and to listen to your performances at the Chopin competition and all the rounds that you were involved in, and to follow your journey towards the road to Warsaw. And great to hear that you're still doing very well and that things are still going in a very positive direction, and wherever you may choose to go with your career as a musician, as a pianist overall, as an artist overall. And well, I mean, we didn't have enough time to cover this part, but you're also DJing as well. So that's also a fun part of yourself. That's also very interesting to see where you will go forward with that one as well. But thank you so much for coming back on and helping us revisit the living legend of Athena Deng.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for tuning into this episode of This is the Legend of. You have just heard the return of Athena Deng to the podcast. You can follow her on her YouTube channel, at Athena Deng Music. Be sure to follow her on that, as she'll be posting some new content as well from her performances and from whatever projects that she may have. You can also follow her on her own social media as well, on Instagram and wherever you may be able to find her. I'll leave links to her social media in the description of this video and also this episode as well. You can also follow us on the different platforms that we have up here. For Zondo, the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and click the bell notification icon so you'll always be notified whenever we upload. Also, follow us on our social media at This Is The Legend Of, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcast. If you want to donate, be sure to donate to our PayPal and visit our website, www.thisisthelegendof.com. We've got some more great content coming up for you as well. Signing off for now, this is Amos Vang. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay legendary.